Okay, today we are going to start chapter 6, and it's all about fractions, decimals, and percents. Today we're going to go over 6.1. I would like you to write down this word right here. The main idea I want to tell you is fractions, decimals, and percents are interchangeable. That means they can be changed, but they still mean the same thing. If I say that 50% of you went out of town for Thanksgiving break, do you understand that 50% is the same thing as 1/2? Yes or no? Okay, very good. Which means it's also the same thing as 0.5. So let's look at the next one, 25%. If I say 25% of you are eating French fries today, does anyone know what that would be as a decimal? 25% as a decimal. What would it be? Nope. Jacoby? 1.4. No. 0.25 would be it as a decimal. Now, that means basically if I had out of 100 people, then I would be saying that 25 of you out of 100 would be buying French fries in the lunchroom. Now, can 25 hundredths be reduced? Yeah, what number can go into a 25 that can also go into a 100, class? A 25. So what would 25 hundredths also be? 1/4. 1/4 is correct. Okay, so what I want you to understand today is 25% is the same thing as 0.25, which is the same thing as 25 out of 100. Okay, so there are some important things that we're going to need to know today. The first thing I want you to write down is, you can see where it says a percent to a decimal. Whenever we have a percent, but we want to change it to a decimal, it tells us to do one thing. What does that first thing tell us to do, class? Move the decimal 2 places to the left. Go ahead and write that down with your red pen, and I want you to copy down the rest of the screen. All right, let's look at the next one. If I were to start off with a decimal, but instead I say I want to change that to a percent, guys, what does it tell me to do? There's 2 steps. Very good. Let's look at the next one. If I am changing something from a fraction to a decimal, there's only one step. What do I have to do? Divide. Very good. And then finally, we're changing from a fraction to a percent. There's 3 steps. You would want to divide. Then it says to move the decimal 2 places to the right. And then finally, we're going to add that percent sign. So these are some steps that are going to help us today as we work through our problems. Here's what the instructions ask us to do. To write the percent as a decimal. Now I want you to imagine that, let's say you have $15. Do you guys understand that $15 written that way means the same thing as $15 written that way? Is that the same thing, yes or no? Yes. Yes, it is. The only thing that's different is I put a decimal point and I added a couple of zeros on that one. So let's look at this 46%. Where is the imaginary decimal point at? At the beginning or at the end? It is at the end. There will always be an imaginary decimal point at the end if you can't see it. So take your red pen and put a dot there after the 46 to show that that is where our decimal point is. Looking at our notes, what does it tell us I need to do if I want to change from a percent to a decimal? Class? Move the decimal 2 places to the left. So I'm going to take that imaginary decimal point that's right here, and I am going to move it 1, 2. This basically means the decimal point is no longer over here. Instead, it is now at the front. So my new answer would be 0.46. 0.46 is interchangeable. It means the same thing as 46%. If it were to be a fraction, it would be 46 out of 100. Let's go on to problem B. Jace, where is the imaginary decimal point at on 245%? Behind the 5. Everyone take your pencil and put an imaginary decimal point. Let's make it right there. Jace, what should I do with that decimal point now that it's there? Move it 2 times to the left. 1, 2. It is now right here instead, making my new answer 2.45, which means 2.45 is the same thing as 245%. Let's go on to the next one. Jocelyn, where is the decimal point at for 20%? At the end. Let's put a dot there. This is how you show me the work. Now I have to move that decimal point how many places, Jocelyn? 2 times to the left. What's my new answer? 0.20. Now there's one number there that I no longer need. Do you think I don't need the 2 or the 0? The 0. Everyone take your red pen and I want you to write a slash through that 0. If that disappears, my final answer is 0.2. Let's move on to the next one. It says 12.6%, and that 6 is repeating. Hey, Lynn, tell me what to do.
Well, since the decimal's already there, then you would just move it 2 times to the left, so it would be 0.1926 repeating.
Very good. Okay, once again, you'll notice she kept the repeating sign still there. Okay, so if the repeating sign's there in the original problem, even if you're changing it over to a decimal, you want to still keep the repeating sign there. All right, as you flip over number 2, it does not ask me to write the percent as a decimal. What does it ask me to do? So here's the deal. On your notes at the front, you can see that I gave you perfectly clear instructions on what to do if you're changing from a decimal to a percent. What did the instructions say to do?
Move the decimal 2 places to the right and then add a percent.
Very good. So you can see right now it says 0.05. I'm going to take the decimal point and move it 2 times to the right. I am left with 0.005. What do you think I can get rid of? Those zeros, you don't need them, so I'm going to erase. And since it asked me to change it to a percent, guess what I have to put at the end of the 5? A percent sign. So 0.05 is the same thing as 5%. Let's go to the next one. Nasir, 1.25. What should I do with my decimal point?
Move it 2 places to the right.
Very good. And what's the answer? 125%. Good job. We don't want to forget to add that percent sign. So this means 1.25 is the same thing as 125%. Let's go on to the next one. Luke, what should I do with my decimal point?
Move it 2 places to the right.
Excellent. And what are you left with?
0.42%.
Okay, 0.42%. Notice he allowed those zeros that were here at the front to disappear. You do not need them because they were in front of the decimal point. Some people have asked, is it okay to have a decimal point and a percent sign at the same time? That is okay. That's no problem whatsoever. Okay, let's go on to the final one. Abigail, what do you think I should do with my decimal point? Move it 2 places to the right. So here's what's interesting. I'm going 1, 2. I want you to think of these little scoopy things here as an egg carton. What goes inside of an egg carton? An egg, okay? So think about this. What do you think that I need to put inside of that little egg carton? A 0, which looks like an egg, okay? Then I'm going to drop that down and add the percent sign, which means 0.6 is the same thing as 60%. If I was asking you to tell me what that would be as a fraction, that would be 60 out of 100. Good job, because percent always comes from 100%. All right, for the next one, it says to write the fraction as a decimal and a percent. Flip over to the front of your notes one more time. As you can see, I am starting with a fraction. Okay, so look right here, the notes that tell me moving from a fraction to a decimal, there's only one word. What do I have to do? Divide. So that's what we're going to start with first, is dividing. The great thing about chapter 6 is this is a calculator chapter. So make sure you bring your calculator with you every single day. But how would I put 4/5 into my calculator, class?
0.25.
How do I put that in my calculator? What does a fraction bar mean? Divide. So what number should I put in first?
5.
The number on the top.
4 divided by 5.
4 divided by 5. Put that in your calculators. Okay, guys, what's the answer? 0.8. Out of 0.8, which one of those numbers can disappear?
0.
The 0. So what's the answer? 0.8. Underneath it, I want you to write 0.8. Now, here's the deal. This says to write the fraction as a decimal, which we did, and a what? A percent, which means I have to change that 0.8 to a percent. Remind me, how do I do that, guys? Move the decimal 2 places to the right. Drop in the egg or drop in the 0. 0.8 is the same thing as what?
80.
80%. here's what I want to see. When you do that, please do not box in the work, okay? Moving those little decimal points with the scoops, that's your work. Please do not box that in. Instead, you can see down here, my final answer, I have the decimal point and I have the percent. Let's go on to problem B. 3 1,000ths. How do you think I turned that into a decimal, class? Divide. Put it in your calculator. 3 divided by 1,000, if you don't know what it is already, and write that answer down. What did you get, Reagan?
0.003.
Okay, 0.003. I've got a bunch of zeros there, but there are a couple of them that I cannot let disappear. Which one can I let go, class?
The first zero.
The very first zero is allowed to go, because that's just saying 0. Am I allowed to get rid of these two right here? No, because this is tucked in between a decimal point and a number. You cannot get rid of those, okay? So instead, I'm going to rewrite it down here for my final answer, 0.003. Michaela, how do I turn 0.003 into a percent?
Move the decimal 2 times to the right.
Move the decimal 2 times to the right, and what are you left with?
0.3%.
0.3% is correct. Class, is it okay to have a decimal point and a percent at the same time?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Any questions about that? All right, let's go on to the next one. To Kobe, 17/15. How do I turn that into a decimal?
You would divide.
Divide. Go ahead and divide it for me. To Kobe, when you put that in, what did you get? 1.13 repeating. Okay, so that is our decimal, 1.13 repeating. Jonathan, how would I change that to a percent? Move the decimal point 2 places to the right. And what's your answer? You're dropping down all of the numbers that are there. So drop down the 1, and the 3, and then put the what sign? The percent sign. Guys, I want you to check your notes, okay? Please make sure that this thing that I have boxed in right here is exactly what your answer is. Remember, once again, you do not want to box in this with all of the work. You are instead boxing in it rewritten nice and neat. I want everyone to try problem D on their own. Reagan, what'd you get for 22/4 as a decimal?
I got 5.5.
Okay, very good. And then Abby, what should I do with the 5.5 to turn it into a percent? Very good. And what's your answer? 550%. Very good. All right. How many of you would say you got problem D correct? Remember, once again, I want your final answer to have both the decimal and the percent because the instructions say to write the fraction as a decimal and a percent. Okay, on the think, pair, share section, guys, it says write the percent as a decimal or the decimal as a percent. Just the girls, what is 39% as a decimal? 0.39 is correct. Very good, because as you know, all we did was we moved the decimal point 2 places to the left. Just the boys. What should I do with that decimal point to turn it into a percent? We do the opposite. 2 times to the right. Boys, what's the answer? 5%. I'd like you guys to do the next 2 on your own. Notice it's asking for 2 answers. Write the fraction as a decimal and a percent. So this is going to look exactly like we just did section number 3. All right, help me, Jonathan. How do I write 7/10 as a decimal? 7 divided by 10, and what is it? 0.7, okay? So when I do that, remember, I do not need to keep the 0. So instead, when I write my final answer, I'm going to say 0.7. Am I finished, class?
No.
No, what do I need to do with the decimal point?
Write it as a percent.
Write it as a percent. Do it 2 places to the right. Guys, 7/10 is the same thing as what percentage? 70%. Okay, so just to kind of help you understand what that means, this is telling me 7 out of 10 people ate the brownies. Okay, Then if I was to do that, that means 70 out of 100 people would have eaten the brownies, which is why we get 70%. Does that make sense? Okay, let's go on to the last one over here, and it says 14/5. Guys, what would that be as a decimal?
2.8.
2.8, okay, because we just put in 14 divided by 5. So 2.8 is my decimal. Now let's change that to a percentage. What do I do with the decimal point?
Leave it 2 places to the right.
2 places to the right. Am I allowed to just box in this answer up here? No, why not?
You have to answer it.
That's the work. I need you instead to rewrite it underneath 280%. Raise your hand if you got both of those correct on your own. If you did not remember to put both of these in the box, please fix it for me before you turn to the next thing. Then what I'm going to do for the remainder of class, I'm going to allow you to actually work on tonight's homework. It is 6.1. It's on big ideas, and there are just 10 problems.